Presente sus pruebas, Aurelio.
Sí, señor. Fue aproximadamente a este nivel donde descubrí huellas de un simio que existió hará unos 1300 años. Y fue a este otro nivel donde encontré herramientas para cortar y puntas de flechas de cuarzo. Verá, señor, todas estas pruebas están aquí. Los artefactos son anteriores en unos 700 años. Y esta es la paradoja, puesto que la civilización más antigua es también la más avanzada. Sí, admito que muchos de ellos no han sido identificados, pero no cabe duda de que quien los construyó tenía conocimientos de metalurgia. El hecho de que todas esas herramientas sean desconocidas para nosotros hace suponer que existió una cultura, en cierto modo, igual que la nuestra.
No.
Hay pruebas que no admiten discusión.
Hay geólogos en mi equipo que se reirían de sus especulaciones.
¿Está la muñeca?
Sí, aquí la muñeca humana, señor.
¿Y qué prueba esto? Mi nieta juega con muñecos humanos. Sus conclusiones son prematuras. Puedo ofrecer otra explicación a cada uno de esos objetos que puede ser tan ingeniosa como la de ustedes, pero sería una conjetura, no una prueba.
Esto es imperdonable. ¿Por qué ocultar lo que sabemos? ¿Y nuestro futuro?
La zona prohibida fue antes el paraíso. Su raza la convirtió en desierto hace siglos. Tiene que haber una respuesta. Puede que no le guste lo que encuentre.
A science delusion is the belief that science already understands the nature of reality in principle, leaving only the details to be filled in. This is a very widespread belief in our society. It's the kind of belief system of people who say, I don't believe in God, I believe in science. It's a belief system which has now been spread to the entire world. But there's a conflict between science as a method of inquiry based on reason, evidence, hypothesis, and collective investigation, and science as a belief system or a worldview. And unfortunately, the worldview aspect of science has come to inhibit and constrict the free inquiry, which is the very lifeblood of the scientific endeavor.
Me pidieron que diera una conferencia a todos los inventores de España. Y yo empecé diciéndole, cuando ustedes inventen algo, nunca se pregunten a quién beneficia, pregúntense a quién perjudica, porque del poder de aquel a quien perjudica dependerá que el invento triunfe o fracase. En mi caso particular, cuando recuerdo al poco tiempo de haber patentado lo de las desaladoras, nos llamaron de una empresa y me ofrecieron un dinero en aquel tiempo bastante suculento. Y yo dije, bueno, ¿y cuándo empezamos la primera? Dijo, no, eso no. ¿Cómo que no, eso no? Dije, no. Nosotros compramos la patente. Si lo hacemos o no lo hacemos, dependerá. Y tiempo después, yo fui a presentar el sistema a Las Palmas, apoyado por el gobierno, porque todos los estudios de mis patentes, quien realmente los ha financiado, curiosamente, ha sido una empresa del Estado y otra empresa del Estado. Entonces fuimos a hacer una primera planta y curiosamente en la reunión estaba el director de la empresa que llevaba el agua de Las Palmas, porque recordemos que todo el agua de España, excepto Madrid, está en manos de empresas francesas. Este señor dice, Alberto, antes que nada te voy a decir una cosa muy clara. Jamás permitiremos que se hagan tu tipo de desaladoras. ¿Y eso por qué? Si mira, nosotros aquí estamos desalando el agua y nos sale normalmente, hablando de unas 90 pesetas metro cúbico. Y la estamos vendiendo a 180, 200. Si aceptáramos hacer tu sistema,
tu agua barata, para que toda la gente joven, sobre todo, está claro, la idea de Alberto, que él es así, paliar el problema del agua. Bien, agua mucho más barata.
Mucho más barata.
¿Y qué ocurre?
Entonces me dice, si nosotros consintiéramos que el agua saliera como sabemos que va a salir, en lugar de 90 a 15 pesetas, y tú te callas, te compramos toda y la seguimos vendiendo a 190. Pero como sabemos que a ti lo que te interesa es decir que el agua es muy barata y que es para la agricultura y para todo, y no te vas a callar, ¿qué va a pasar si nosotros compramos el agua a 15 pesetas? ¿A cuánto nos va a permitir el gobierno venderla? A 30, a 50, 4 veces más cara, ya sería un escándalo. Estaríamos ganando 25 o 30 pesetas de metro cúbico, cuando ahora ganamos 90 o 100. Y me dijo concretamente, ¿qué te interesa más a ti? ¿Vender 100.000 libros en tapadura o vender 100.000 libros de bolsillo? Después lo mismo para nosotros, ganamos más. Digo, hombre, pero los libros lo compran que quieran, el agua es un bien imprescindible, no estás pensando en los consumidores. Su respuesta fue, el consumidor es un problema del gobierno, no mía. Olvídate.
Since the late 19th century, science has been conducted under the aspect of a belief system or worldview, which is essentially that of materialism, philosophical materialism. And these sciences are now wholly owned subsidiaries of the materialist worldview. I think that as we break out of it, the sciences will be regenerated. What I do in my book is take the 10 dogmas or assumptions of science and turn them into questions, seeing how well they end up if you look at them scientifically. None of them stand up very well. But essentially the 10 dogmas, which are the default worldview of most educated people all over the world, are first that nature is mechanical or machine-like. The universe is like a machine, animals and plants are like machines, we're like machines. In fact, we are machines. We're lumbering robots, in Richard Dawkins' vivid phrase, with brains that are genetically programmed computers. Second, matter is unconscious. The whole universe is made up of unconscious matter. There's no consciousness in stars, in galaxies, in planets, in animals, in plants, and there ought not to be any in us either, if this theory is true. So a lot of the philosophy of mind over the last 100 years is trying to prove that we're not really conscious at all. So the matter's unconscious, then the laws of nature are fixed. This is dogma 3. Not just the laws, but the constants of nature are fixed, which is why they're called constants. Dogma 4, the total amount of matter and energy is always the same. It never changes in total quantity, except at the moment of the Big Bang, when it all sprang into existence from nowhere in a single instant. The fifth dogma is that nature is purposeless. There are no purposes in all nature, and the evolutionary purpose has no purpose or direction. Dogma 6, the biological heredity is material. Everything you inherit is in your genes, or in epigenetic modifications of the genes, or in cytoplasmic inheritance. It's material. Dogma 7, memories are stored inside your brain as material traces. Somehow everything you remember is in your brain in modified nerve endings, phosphorylated proteins. No one knows how it works, but nevertheless, almost everyone in the scientific world believes it must be in the brain. Dogma 8, your mind is inside your head. All your consciousness is the activity of your brain and nothing more. Dogma 9, which follows from Dogma 8, psychic phenomena like telepathy are impossible. Your thoughts and intentions cannot have any effect at a distance because your mind's inside your head. Therefore, all the apparent evidence for telepathy and other psychic phenomena is illusory. People believe these things happen, but it's just because they don't know enough about statistics, or they're deceived by coincidences, or it's wishful thinking. And Dogma 10, mechanistic medicine is the only kind that really works. That's why governments only fund research into mechanistic medicine and ignore complementary and alternative therapies. Those can't possibly really work because they're not mechanistic. They may appear to work because people would have got better anyway, or because of the placebo effect. Well, this is the default worldview which is held by almost all educated people all over the world. It's the basis of the educational system, the National Health Service, the Medical Research Council, governments, and it's just the default worldview of educated people. But I think every one of these dogmas is very, very questionable. And when you look at it, it turns, they fall apart. I'm going to take first the idea that the laws of nature are fixed. This is a hangover from an older worldview before the 1960s, when the Big Bang theory came in. People thought that the whole universe was eternal, governed by eternal mathematical laws. When the Big Bang came in, then that assumption continued, but the idea is all the laws of nature were completely fixed at the moment of the Big Bang, like a cosmic Napoleonic code. As my friend Terence McKenna used to say, modern science is based on the principle, give us one free miracle and we'll explain the rest. And the one free miracle is the appearance of all the matter and energy in the universe and all the laws that govern it from nothing in a single instant. Well, in an evolutionary universe, why shouldn't the laws themselves evolve? After all, human laws do, and the idea of laws of nature is based on a metaphor with human laws. It's a very anthropocentric metaphor. As C.S. Lewis once said, to say that a stone falls to earth because it's obeying a law makes it a man and even a citizen. Things like the gravitational constant, the speed of light, are called the fundamental constants. Are they really constant? Well, when I got interested in this question, I tried to find out. They're given in physics handbooks. Handbooks of physics list the existing fundamental constants to tell you their value. But I wanted to see if they'd changed, so I got the old volumes of physical handbooks. I went to the Patent Office Library here in London, and they're the only place I could find that kept the old volumes. Normally people throw them away when the new values come out. They throw away the old ones. When I did this, I found that the speed of light dropped between 1928 and 1945 by about 20 kilometers per second. It's a huge drop because they're given with errors of only fractions of a decimal points of error. And yet, all over the world, it dropped, and they were all getting values very similar to each other with tiny errors. Then in 1945, it went up, 48, it went up again. And then people started getting very similar values again. I was very intrigued by this, and I couldn't make sense of it. So I went to see the head of metrology at the National Physical Laboratory in Teddington. Metrology is the science in which people measure constants. And I asked him about this. I said, what do you make of this drop in the speed of light between 1928 and 1945? And he said, oh dear, he said, you've uncovered the most embarrassing episode in the history of our science. So I said, well, could the speed of light have actually dropped? And that would have amazing implications if so. He said, no, of course it couldn't have actually dropped. It's a constant. So, well then how do you explain the fact everyone was finding it going much slower during that period? Is it because they were fudging their results to get what they thought other people should be getting, and the whole thing was just produced in the minds of physicists? We don't like to use the word fudge. I said, well, what do you prefer? He said, well, we prefer to call it intellectual phase locking. So I said, well, if it was going on then, how can we be so sure it's not going on today? He said, we've solved the problem. And I said, well, how? He said, well, we fixed the speed of light by definition in 1972. So I said, but it might still change. He said, yes, but we'd never know it because we defined the meter in terms of the speed of light. So the units had changed with it. So he looked very pleased about that. They'd fixed that problem. But I said, well, then what about big G, the gravitational constant known in the trade as big G? It's written with a capital G, Newton's universal gravitational constant. That's varied by more than 1.3% in recent years. And it seems to vary from place to place and from time to time. And he said, oh, well, those are just errors. And unfortunately, there are quite big errors with big G. So I said, well, what if it's really changing? I mean, perhaps it is really changing. And then I looked at how they do it. What happens is they measure it in different labs. They get different values on different days, and then they average them. And then other labs around the world do the same, and they come out usually with a rather different average. And then the International Committee on Metrology meets every 10 years or so and average the ones from labs around the world to come up with the value of big G. But what if G were actually fluctuating? What if it changed? And there's already evidence actually that it changes throughout the day and throughout the year. Maybe they all change together. What if these errors are going up together and down together? For more than 10 years, I've been trying to persuade metrologists to look at the raw data. In fact, I'm now trying to persuade them to put it online on the internet with the dates and the actual measurements and see if they're correlated, to see if they're all up at one time, all down at another. If so, they might be fluctuating together, and that would tell us something very, very interesting. But no one has done this. They haven't done it because G is a constant. There's no point looking for changes. You see, here's a very simple example of where a dogmatic assumption actually inhibits inquiry. I myself think that the constants may vary quite considerably, well, within narrow limits, but they may all be varying. And I think the day will come when scientific journals like Nature have a weekly report on the constants, like stock market reports in newspapers. You know, this week big G was slightly up, the charge on the electron was down, the speed of light held steady, and so on.
Prepárense para la velocidad de la luz.
No, la velocidad de la luz es muy lenta.
La velocidad de la luz lenta.
Sí, tendremos que utilizar la velocidad absurda.
¿Velocidad absurda? Señor, jamás hemos ido tan deprisa.
¿Qué le pasa, coronel Sandur? ¿Tiene miedo?
Prepare para velocidad absurda.
¡Velocidad absurda!
¡Ya!
One of the biggest areas is the nature of the mind. This is the most unsolved problem, as Graham just said, that science simply can't deal with the fact we're conscious. And it can't deal with the fact that our thoughts don't seem to be inside our brains. Our experiences don't all seem to be inside our brain. Your image of me now doesn't seem to be inside your brain, yet the official view is there's a little Rupert somewhere inside your head, and everything else in this room is inside your head. Your experience is inside your brain. I'm suggesting actually that vision involves an outward projection of images. What you're seeing is in your mind but not inside your head. Our minds are extended beyond our brains in the simplest act of perception. I think that we project out the images we're seeing, and these images touch what we're looking at. If I look at you from behind, you don't know I'm there. Could I affect you? Could you feel my gaze? There's a great deal of evidence that people can. The sense of being stared at is an extremely common experience, and recent experimental research suggests it's real. Now, it may seem astonishing that this is a topic of debate in the 21st century. We know so little about our own minds that where our images are is a hot topic of debate within consciousness studies right now. If one questions it, new forms of research, new possibilities open up. And I think as we question these dogmas that have held back science so long, science will undergo a reflowering, a renaissance. I'm a total believer in the importance of science. I've spent my whole life as a research scientist, my whole career. Thank you.
Tesla decía que tuviéramos cuidado con los científicos, nos advertía que se está usando el lenguaje matemático para justificar cosas, que es indudable que todo esto sale de una gran explosión de la nada. Estamos flotando en el universo y un montón de cosas que damos por sentadas que afectan nuestra filosofía de vida, que no tenía que ver exactamente con estas verdades científicas como nos quieren imponer a través de dogmas científicos.
Gran parte de los modelos que se tienen respecto del universo e inclusive de la biología se basan en supuestos. Si suponemos que esto es así, empezamos a construir todo lo demás. Pero nadie demuestra si el supuesto está bien o está mal. Por ejemplo, yo no puedo llevar a un laboratorio la experiencia del Big Bang. Entonces tengo que basarme en las ecuaciones que se realizan, que a su vez se basan en supuestos. ¿Y cuál es el supuesto? Básicamente que en la organización de la materia no hay inteligencia, sino que es azar. Es como si explotara una imprenta y al azar saliera como resultado la enciclopedia británica. Pasan por alto la complejidad de la vida. Lo que se quiere es minimizar la naturaleza consciente del ser humano. Significa que un ser humano más, un ser humano menos no tiene ninguna importancia. Con el advenimiento de la revolución industrial, la gente dejó los campos y tuvo que irse a las ciudades. Y las industrias necesitaban empleados que les hicieran funcionar. Alternativamente, había que defender esa industria y necesitaban soldados. Todo el sistema educacional estaba construido para producir empleados y soldados. El propósito de que las personas aprendieran a leer era para que leyendo se autoeducaran. Sin embargo, los niños ahora leen para el colegio y después no leen nunca más. La educación en realidad está produciendo lo que realmente tiene que producir. Gente que sigue instrucciones.
Por lo tanto, gente que no piensa. Y no solamente está creando esclavos, porque el esclavo piensa por último y se puede rebelar. Pero aquí la gente se siente bien como está.
Mira, lo más parecido que hay a esto que estamos viviendo ahora, creo yo, es lo que aparece en una novela que se llama
Mundo Feliz, Aldous Huxley.
Se les ha enseñado a la gente a ser espectadora. ¿Dónde entra el pecado en la ciencia, por decirlo así? Ocurre que los científicos son gente sabia, pero no son empresarios ni tienen el capital. Y para poder desarrollar sus experimentos necesitan financiamiento. Y cuando llegue el momento de entregar las conclusiones, van a responder a los intereses de quienes lo están financiando. Porque, por ejemplo, si estoy investigando y me está pagando Bayer, y yo digo que la aspirina no sirve para nada, estoy poniendo como a modo de ejemplo, obviamente voy a quedar sin financiamiento. Entonces, de una manera u otra, tengo que doblegar mis evidencias
para favorecer la industria.
Y yo lo sé porque yo vi cómo funcionaban las presentaciones y las postulaciones a proyectos para poder financiar programas de investigación. Entonces, muchos científicos simplemente tienen que quedarse callados con frente a las cosas que encuentran, porque si no se quedan sin financiamiento. Entonces, ahí entra la fase oscura de la ciencia. Entonces, la pregunta es, ¿los datos que estamos recibiendo son científicos o tienen el apellido científico para validarlo para los fines y los propósitos de aquellos que están financiando? Obviamente, la mejor forma de esconder una mentira es entre dos verdades. O sea, hoy hay cosas que son ciertas, por supuesto, pero bajo cuerda van cosas que son muy raras. Por ejemplo, el flúor en el agua, que tiene como propósito disminuir el número de caries. Capaz que sí, capaz que no, pero tiene efecto en volver dóciles a la gente.
Exactamente, hacerlos imbéciles, esa es la verdad.
Las matemáticas le dan un elemento objetivo al análisis, pero no son una verdad escrita en piedra. No tener miedo a hacerse preguntas, porque definitivamente son las preguntas las que van ensanchando el horizonte.
¿Qué tiene de malo que la ciencia sea práctica, incluso rentable?
Nada, mientras el motivo sea la búsqueda de la verdad. No estoy en contra de la tecnología, doctor. Estoy en contra de aquellos que la ensalzan a expensas de la verdad del hombre.
I think there are a good number of things that cannot be scientifically proven, but that we're all rational to accept. Logical and mathematical truths cannot be proven by science. Science presupposes logic and math, so that to try to prove them by science would be arguing in a circle. Metaphysical truths, like there are other minds other than my own, or that the external world is real, or that the past was not created 5 minutes ago with an appearance of age, are rational beliefs that cannot be scientifically proven. Ethical beliefs about statements of value are not accessible by the scientific method. Aesthetic judgment cannot be accessed by the scientific method because the beautiful, like the good, cannot be scientifically proven. And finally, most remarkably, would be science itself. Science cannot be justified by the scientific method. Science is permeated with unprovable assumptions. For example, in the special theory of relativity, the whole theory hinges on the assumption that the speed of light is constant in a one-way direction between any 2 points A and B. But that strictly cannot be proven. We simply have to assume that in order to hold. None of these beliefs can be scientifically proven, and yet they are accepted by all of us.